The Whistle at Mile 17. In the summer of 1994, a stretch of railroad track in rural West Virginia became the talk of a small town called Dunmere. This wasn't your typical sleepy hamlet. It sat near an old coal mine that shut down in the 60s, leaving behind rusting tracks and whispers of bad luck. The locals avoided the area, especially a lonely mile marker known as Mile 17, where trains used to slow down for a sharp curve. But in July of that year, something happened there that no one could explain, and it all started with a guy named Danny Pruitt. Danny was 28, a mechanic with a taste for adventure. He wasn't from Dunmere. He'd moved there a year earlier after fixing up an old pickup truck and deciding to see where the road took him. He rented a trailer on the edge of town and spent his free time exploring the backwoods with his Polaroid camera. Danny had heard the rumors about Mile 17. Folks said they'd hear a train whistle late at night, even though no trains had run through since the mine closed. Most chalked it up to wind or imagination. But Danny, he was curious. One humid evening, armed with his camera and a flashlight, Danny hiked out to Mile 17. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky blood red as he reached the rusted tracks. The air was still, heavy with the smell of damp earth and rotting wood. He snapped a few photos of the mile marker, a faded wooden post with 17 carved into it, and sat on a nearby rock to wait. He figured if there was anything to the stories, he'd hear it after dark. Around 11 p.m., it happened. A sharp, piercing whistle cut through the silence. Not distant like a memory, but close, like it was right on top of him. Danny jolted upright, his flashlight beam darting across the tracks. Nothing. No train, no lights, just the empty curve disappearing into the trees. He laughed it off his nerves and took another photo, the flash briefly lighting up the dark. But when he lowered the camera, he froze. There, about 20 yards down the tracks, was a figure. It was tall, too tall, and thin like a shadow stretched wrong. It didn't move, just stood there, facing him. Danny called out, "Hey, who's there?" No reply. The air got colder, and his flashlight flickered. Then, the whistle blew again, louder, and the figure took a step forward. Danny didn't wait. He bolted, crashing through the brush back to his truck, heart pounding like a drum. When he got home, he locked the door and didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, Danny developed his Polaroids. Most were normal shots of the tracks, the marker, the trees. But the last one, taken right after that second whistle, it showed the figure. Not clearly, just a blurry, dark shape against the tracks. But its head was tilted, like it was watching him. Danny swore it wasn't there when he took the shot. He showed it to his neighbor, an old-timer named Ruth, who went pale. "You heard the whistle, didn't you?" she asked. When he nodded, she told him the story. Back in 1958, a freight train derailed at Mile 17. The engineer, a man named Caleb Holt, had been working the route alone. They found the wreckage, but not Caleb, just his cap, sitting neatly on the tracks like he'd stepped away. Ever since, people claimed to hear his whistle, and some, like Ruth's uncle, saw a figure out there. "It's him," she said. "He's still waiting for his train." Danny didn't buy it. He wasn't the superstitious type. But 2 nights later, he woke up to that whistle again, this time outside his trailer. He peeked through the blinds and saw it. The figure, standing in his driveway, holding something in its hand. The Polaroid he'd taken was gone from his table. That was enough. Danny packed his stuff and left Dunmere the next day, never looking back. The weirdest part? A year later, a hiker found that Polaroid nailed to the Mile 17 marker. The figure was still blurry, but now there was a second shape in the background, shorter, stockier, like Danny's silhouette. No one's seen him since he left, and his trailer's still empty. Locals say if you hear the whistle at Mile 17, don't take pictures. Because whatever's out there, it's keeping them.